Here in New York City, one of the most expensive places in America to live, this man right here has made his home on the streets. He said he could no longer afford to pay rent.
I live in the United States, which is supposed to be the greatest country on earth. I live in the back half of a garage. It's $1,600 a month and only 200 square feet.
Today, we're diving into a topic that hits close to home for millions, the absolute state of the rental market. We've all seen the viral videos and desperate posts, but is it the same everywhere? I've got some clips from the US and China that paint a starkly different picture. We're going to react to the stories, look at the comments, and crunch the numbers. Let's get into it.
Here in New York City, one of the most expensive places in America to live, this man right here has made his home on the streets. He said he could no longer afford to pay rent. Here, the average rent is around $4,500 a month, while the minimum wage is $16 an hour. This man says, I no longer can afford to pay rent. He's literally moved all his belongings outside. He's out here sitting on a chair, relaxing. Has a seat. He has his blankets, his cushions from his couch, pallets. And he says he's living a great life now. He says, I have no overhead. I've never felt more free as he's living here on the streets in New York City. It's so expensive to live here. People are literally going homeless on the streets.
He says he's free because he's homeless. Let that sink in. In New York, the median rent for a one-bedroom apartment is over $4,000. At $16 an hour, you make about $2,800 a month before taxes. That means rent alone would take your entire paycheck. So when a guy says he's free living on the sidewalk, is he wrong? The system didn't just fail him. It was designed to kick him out. Now let's read a comment. California and New York are trying to outdo each other on who can crash and burn the fastest. Yeah, so in 2025, the average US rent is nearly $2,000 a month. But in cities like LA and New York, you're looking at $3,000, $4,000, and even $5,000 a month. Meanwhile, wages haven't budged. You may call it a housing crisis, but it's also a wage hostage situation.
I'm an American. I live in the United States, which is supposed to be the greatest country on earth. I live in the back half of a garage. It's $1,600 a month and only 200 square feet. That's more than half my income. I'm an American. The United States has the world's largest economy. That being said, it still has thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of its citizens living on the streets, hungry and poor and without medical care. The last time I went to the emergency room, it cost me $12,000. I'm an American. A college education isn't free here, and mine cost $120,000. It took me 10 years to pay that off. I'm an American. You're not going to get a good paying career anymore. A college education no longer amounts for anything. You're going to get a minimum wage job to start off, no matter what degree you have, and you're going to be paying off your interest and your loans for the rest of your life. Our corporate CEOs are millionaires and billionaires, and yet they refuse to pay their employees a livable wage because they know we'll work it anyway. I'm an American. Despite being the land of opportunities, we're the #1 country for mass shootings. I'm an American. I couldn't afford a child, and who would want to have one here anyway? School shootings happen all the time, and nobody seems to care. I will never be able to afford my own house. I'm an American. I've never been out of this country. I've never been on vacation. Our tax dollars secretly fund wars that we don't agree to. If you leave this country, you still have to pay taxes to the USA. I'm an American, and I fear I'm just the average American.
$1,600 for a garage. Is that housing? Sounds more like exploitation. And she's not alone. Nearly half of all American renters spend over 30% of their income on rent. That's the definition of rent burdened. But when more than half of your paycheck goes to a closet with a bed, that's not just a burden. That's a trap. Let's check out this comment. USA has turned into a hell for its citizens and has worse conditions on living, education, health, safety, I guess they're trying to say worse than third world countries. But yeah, when healthcare, education, and housing all require debt or homelessness, what else can you call it? The US is the only rich country without universal healthcare. Student debt is over $1.5 trillion. It's a system that treats survival like a luxury.
Rent is so expensive that minimum wage workers need 3 roommates or 4 jobs to afford a 2-bedroom apartment. In fact, there's not a single state in America where a minimum wage worker that's full-time can afford a 2-bedroom apartment. So look at this for example. If you live in Alabama where the minimum wage is $7.25 an hour, you'd have to work 90 hours a week to afford a 2-bedroom. Now you would need to work 74 hours a week to afford the average 1-bedroom apartment in Alabama at the minimum wage. So someone explain to me why we're pretending that workers are the problem when it's the corporations that are arbitrarily pushing up prices on rent, food, laying off workers, all to maximize their profits. Like, how is this system that we're currently living in sustainable?
I mean, nowhere in America can a full-time minimum wage worker afford a 2-bedroom apartment. Not one state. In Alabama, you'd need to work 90 hours a week. That's 2.5 full-time jobs just to pay rent. And we still act like the problem is lazy workers. Nah, I don't think so. The problem is a system where landlords jack up prices, corporations lay people off for profit, and people are expected to survive on wages from the 1970s. This isn't capitalism, it's cannibalism. Meanwhile, in China, people earning similar wages live in actual homes, not garages or vans. Maybe it's not the workers who are failing. Maybe it's the system. Okay, let's check out these comments. Sam says, I use a full paycheck to pay for my rent, and it's a 1-bed. Yup, I call that rent week, and it sucks until I get paid again. Yup, I was like, it's payday, but I won't see any of it. I had $1.77 left over from this check. You need Jesus or maybe a good internet connection so you can find out what the hell people are going through in this country. We have to use our savings to live. Not everyone can even afford to save. I have to use 2 full checks, and I'm left with nothing for food, gas, etc. until the 3rd check. Pretty much starve, lol. And then if you try to apply for food stamps, they tell you make too much. How the fuck am I supposed to eat? When you're spending 100% of your income on a tiny apartment, there's no room for error. No savings, no buffer, just rent week. And then the next one. And if you try to get help, they say you make too much. So you're basically trapped between a roof and a meal.
Let me show you my apartment in China. It's 1,200 square feet for $300 a month, and honestly, I think it's a bit overpriced. But I just want to show you what a typical middle-class apartment looks like in China. So when you rent an apartment here, it's expected that the landlord provide basic furniture for the tenants, like a couch, tables and chairs, wardrobes, and bed frames. We really lucked out because we were the first tenants to live here, so all the furniture was never used before. But sadly, there's no oven. This apartment has 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. We turned 1 bedroom into a closet because there are none, and another bedroom into our office. And that's it. No bells, no whistles, just cheap building materials and chintzy furniture.
Think about that. A 3-bedroom apartment, $300 a month, and she thinks it's overpriced. In the US, that's the cost of 1 month of parking in LA. And as you can see, this isn't a slum. This is what a typical middle-class neighborhood in China looks like. But here's the truth. In China, you can live like a human being without selling your soul to rent. And Just Jules comments, honey, that's cheap. For a studio in California, it's $1,400 to $3,000. Juan says, 3-bedroom for $300 and it's overpriced? Girl, in LA, that $300 is a bathroom alone. So this comment says it better than I ever could. What's considered overpriced in China is a fantasy in America. We're not talking about being rich, okay? It's about the baseline. In China, the baseline is a roof, space, and dignity. In the US, it's a garage and a prayer.
Where can we find the lowest rents in the city? In urban villages, it's where people with relatively low income live. Here, you're gonna find the lowest rents, the cheapest groceries, and the best food is usually hiding here too. I'm gonna move my house recently, so I've been looking for some nice apartments with reasonable rents. Let's go find it! We are on our way to the first apartments, rent directly from the landlord. Let's call the landlord. The landlord is gonna provide all the furniture for you, yeah? This is a single bedroom, and here you can cook, and here's a toilet. And the sunlight's good, and this one is very cheap. It's only around $70 and there's also public space that you can hang your clothes outside. The landlord, she's got several buildings here, so she can rent lots of apartments to the tenants. So jealous, I'm so jealous. Here we are. Come with, of course, mattress, wardrobe, a desk, and also air conditioner, and the washing machine. You can also cook it here. Ooh, the toilet. You don't have to squat. Oh, you can also hang your clothes outside. This apartment is deeper inside this village, so the rent is gonna be even cheaper. Most of the houses in the urban village are like quite old and do not have elevators. If you want an even better sunlight, you have to climb all the way to the 6th floor. Here we are. This one has got one living room and also a bedroom. Windows, nice. And another window. And also the kitchen is separated from the living room. You can buy clothes here. Wow. A coat like this is only 19 yuan. Oh, seriously? 19? A sweater is 39 RMB, which means, oh, less than $6. I told you guys, the cost of living is super cheap here. I don't think I can get used to the noise here, so maybe I will rent an apartment somewhere else. And I just want to add something. The monthly wage for people living here is going to be around $500 to $2,000 most likely. And usually around 10 to 20% of their monthly wage goes to rents.
So here you see where low-income Chinese people live. A single bedroom apartment for $70 a month. And here's the kicker. People spend 10 to 20% of their income on rent. In China, even low-income workers keep most of their paycheck. That's what happens when you have proper policy. They treat housing as a right here, not a profit center. Alex says, bro, my family lives in public housing. Since our income is so low and we still have to pay 400 euros plus, and we don't have an elevator or anything. So even in Europe, public housing costs 6 times more than a market rate apartment in China. That's how broken their expectations are. They've been trained to think that $1,500 for a shoebox is normal. Meanwhile, in China, $300 gets you a home. In America, it gets you a parking spot. Yeah, so in this last clip, we talked about old apartment buildings without elevators. Now, here's how China's actually fixing the problem.
China is facing a huge problem, an aging population and a lot of apartment buildings with no elevators. Yeah, I know, it sounds diabolical. How could these 10-story buildings be built without using elevators? Today I'm gonna show you how we're tackling that problem. Introducing external elevator! First, let's take a look of the old way of getting home. This was the front entrance. My uncle's family lives on the 5th floor. Back when they moved in, this was company-provided housing, a very common part of the old plan economy. Basically, if you worked for a factory your whole life, they gave you a unit like this. These buildings even have a nickname, Khrushchev blocks or Commie blocks. But they forgot one thing, people get old. Now imagine climbing these stairs every day in your 70s, or worse, needing a wheelchair. So here's the fix. They built a brand new elevator shaft on the backside of the building, added a new balcony, punched through a new door, and boom, accessibility unlocked. Residents use a keycard for security, and you will never have to touch those stairs again. Your old apartment now has a brand new balcony, an extra space that can be used as a sunroom, garden, or anything you like. Now you're probably wondering, how much does it cost? Well, it's not cheap. Average between $50,000 to $70,000, but the government subsidizes almost half of the construction, and you chip in with your neighbors. That's a solid deal if it means staying in your home for decades more. This is how China is future-proofing its aging neighborhood. Follow me for more stories exploring cities in China!
Instead of forcing seniors to move or climb 10 flights of stairs, China is adding elevators, literally building new shafts onto old buildings, with government subsidies and shared costs among neighbors. They're solving accessibility, and they're also giving people new balconies, dignity, and a way to age in peace. In America, they'd call this affordable housing innovation. In China, it's just common sense. And here are a few comments. EMJ Inc. says, every time I hear a story about China, it's them spending billions to make life easier for their people, while we spent billions on bombs to give to Israel. And that's the truth no one wants to admit. China spends billions on high-speed rail, housing, and elevators for seniors. The US spends billions on bombs, wars, and regime change. One builds a future for its people, the other exports chaos and calls it foreign policy. And then they wonder why life there feels like it's falling apart. This comment says, we should pay attention to what he said about companies giving houses to their employees if they worked for them between 30 to 40 years, or even a little less. And this was on top of their salaries and social benefits. It's outrageous if we compare that system to what we're doing now. Working to earn our living and housing costs being almost unable to save anything. And if you save something with a lot of effort, you use it to take a loan and pay a mortgage for 30 to 40 years to be able to have your own house. People used to get a house from their company after 30 years of work, on top of their salary and benefits. Not a mortgage, not a 30-year loan. A house. And Americans, they're lucky if they can afford a garage. Americans went from work hard, get rewarded, to work hard, maybe don't get evicted. So what's the takeaway? In America, full-time work isn't enough. You can be employed, educated, and still lose everything to rent. In China, even low-wage workers can afford a decent place to live and still have money left. This isn't about politics, it's about results. One country treats housing as a commodity, the other treats it as a necessity. And the proof, it's in the rent check. So tell me, is it really freedom when you're one paycheck away from the streets? Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you want your comment read in the next video, leave it below. Like, subscribe, and stay loud. Because silence is how broken systems survive. Until next time, bye.